Hey guys, in today's video, I wanna show you this incredibly powerful Stamina Sorcerer build I've been using to solo veteran dungeons. You can also use it to solo world bosses, Harrowstorms, dragons, etc. And this build absolutely obliterates them, because it was made for soloing dungeons, which are far more difficult than any overland content. If you want to see this build in action, I have two videos. One where I use a slightly older version of this build to solo veteran and Hallowed Grave, and one where I use this exact version of this build to solo veteran Moongrave Fane. Both of them will be linked in the description. The build is also on my website, so if you prefer written guides over YouTube videos, you can read it there instead. The link will be in the description. In this guide, I'll be regularly using the terms regular and difficult. Regular refers to content that is intended to be soloed, such as Maelstrom Arena or Vateshran Arena, and to any overland content, such as world bosses, Dolmens, dragons, Volcanic Vents, Harrowstorms, Mirrormoor Incursions, etc. Difficult refers to soloing 4-man content, such as dungeons. But even then, some of the easier dungeons would fall under the regular category. The line between regular and difficult isn't very rigid though. If you're struggling with a world boss, you can't just use the difficult skill and gear setups, which will have better survivability at the cost of having less damage. So let's start with skill setups. This is the regular skill setup. Bloodthirst is a spammable that will heal you for 33% of the damage done. Haunting Curse is an ability that simply deals a lot of damage per cast. Bound Armaments passively grants you 8% max stamina, and it can be used every 4 light attacks for a strong direct hit. Crystal Fragments is an ability that has a 33% chance to become empowered whenever you use an ability on your front bar. Use it whenever it procs. This ability will also proc the Exploitation passive, increasing your critical chance by 6%, and it will also heal you for 10% of your max health, thanks to the Blood Magic passive. Next we have Camouflage Hunter. This ability will passive grant you the Major Savagery and Major Prophecy buffs, which will increase your critical chance by 12%. It will also trigger the Slayer passive, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 3%. Flawless Dawnbreaker is an ultimate that will keep slotted to activate the Slayer passive, which increases weapon and spell damage by 3%. You can also use it towards the end of the fight, if it's obvious you won't get enough ultimate for another Summon Charge Atronach. Hurricane is your source of Major Resolve, which is a crucial defensive buff, and it also deals decent damage. Critical Surge is your source of Major Brutality and Sorcery, that will also heal you for 3300 whenever you deal critical damage, up to once every second. The heal itself can also be a critical heal. Next we have Elemental Susceptibility, an extremely loaded ability that does a multitude of things. First of all, it's completely free to cast, so it helps us sustain. Second, it applies Major Breach, which reduces enemies' armor by 5948, which is a massive damage increase. And third, it applies Burning, Chilled, and Concussed stats effects at the beginning and then every 7.5 seconds. All of these stats effects deal decent damage, but Concussed will also apply minor vulnerability for 4 seconds, increasing enemies' damage taken by 5%. Chilled will also apply minor maim for 4 seconds, reducing enemies' damage done by 5%, and it will also apply minor brittle for 4 seconds, if you were on your Ice Staff bar, while the Chilled effect procced, which is always going to happen at the beginning, when you cast Elemental Susceptibility. Minor Brittle increases critical damage taken by 10%. The Chilled proc will also synergize with our next ability. Elemental Blockade will constantly apply our Backbar enchant, in this case the Weapon Damage enchantment. It will also constantly apply Minor Breach to enemies who are chilled, and they will be chilled thanks to Elemental Susceptibility. Barbed Trap is a dot that will also apply Hemorrhage stats effect at the start and grant you Minor Frost buff, increasing your critical damage by 10%. Summon Charge Atronach is the most powerful ultimate Sorcerer has access to. It will also keep proccing the Concussion stats effect, which will keep up the Minor Vulnerability debuff, which increases enemies' damage taken by 5%. Now moving on to situational skills. Haunting Curse is the skill that has to go whenever you need to slot something situational. So first situational skill is Resolving Vigor. Use it for more difficult fights, where the pressure is constant and thus you need the minor resolve. Next we have Hardened Ward. Use it for more difficult fights where the pressure happens during a specific phase, but there are also phases where you don't need to be on the defensive. Next is Ball of Lightning. Use it for fights where you need to get around really fast, or where this ability allows you to completely skip certain mechanics, like for example the Wall of Aurorans in the Symphony of Blades fight. Next we have Whirling Blades, an AoE spammable that can replace Bloodthirst in trash fights. Next is Rapid Strikes. This morph deals more damage and is cheaper than Bloodthirst. You can switch to it when doing trivial content. And lastly we have Focused Aim, a ranged spammable that can be used instead of Bloodthirst, in fights where you need to stay at range. Now as for rotation, I don't use a static rotation, so this is just a list of priorities. Simply recast abilities when they run out, and follow the list of priorities when there are multiple things to refresh. Use Critical Surge, use Elemental Susceptibility, use Elemental Blockade, Barb Trap, Hurricane, Summon Charge Achanak ultimate if it's ready, Crystal Fragments proc if it's ready, Haunting Curse, Bound Armaments if it's at 4 stacks, and Bloodthirst otherwise. Keep in mind that you can pre-buff Critical Surge and Hurricane before entering combat. Now this is the difficult skill setup for extremely difficult fights. I'm only going to go over the skills that changed compared to the regular setup. Revealing Flare is a skill that will passively grant you major protection, reducing your damage taken by 10%. It will also trigger the Magicate passive, which increases magical recovery by 10%. Ulf's Contingency, with the Shock, Gladiator's Tenacity and Force combination on it, is a delayed AoE damage that also grants you 8% damage reduction for 8 seconds, and Minor Force for 22 seconds, which increases critical damage by 10%. You should recast it every 8 seconds when under pressure, and every 22 seconds otherwise. Use Barb Trap instead, if you don't have access to scribing. Bound Aegis is an ability that will passively grant you Minor Resolve, which grants almost 3000 armor, and Minor Protection, which reduces damage taken by 5%. It will also grant you 8% max magicka, though it's not very important for this build. The situational skills for difficult setup are the same as the ones for regular setup, and the only difference is that now you're replacing Revealing Flare whenever you need to slot any of them, instead of Haunting Curse. Now as for rotation, it's extremely similar. It's Critical Surge, Hurricane, then Ulf's Contingency, and here, as I said before, you refresh it every 8 seconds when under pressure, or every 22 seconds otherwise, then Elemental Susceptibility, Elemental Blockade, Summon Charge Achanak if it's ready, Crystal Fragments proc if it's ready, and Bloodthirst otherwise. The 3 skills you can cast before combat are Critical Surge, Hurricane, and this time also Ulf's Contingency. Now as for passives, the only passive you specifically have to skip is Trifocus. I am now very quickly going through all of the passives you should get on the screen. You can either pause the video or look up this list on the website guide. Now moving on to gear. Here's an example of a beginner setup made with just crafted sets. So Order's Wrath, Threads of War, and 2-piece Assassin's Guile. The setup in the table uses only crafted gear, but if you already own parts of the regular setup, which I'll talk about in a moment, like Ring of the Pale Order, you can start using them immediately. The weight distribution of the setup from the table is 1 heavy, 5 medium, and 1 light, so that you can start leveling up all your armor skill lines. Once you transition to regular setup, you'll be using 6 medium, 1 light most of the time, switching to 1 heavy, 5 medium, 1 light only against more difficult fights. But you don't have to start with this specific setup. Now I'm gonna show you a bunch of alternatives, which are either crafted, come from Overland, or from dungeons. Simply pick 2 sets that are easiest for you to obtain, or maybe you already have some of them. As for crafted gear, we have the Order's Wrath and Threads of War, which I've already put in the table, but Hunding's Rage is also a decent option. Now as for Overland, we have Mother's Sorrow, which is a light set from Deshaan, Back Alley Gourmet, which is a light set from Galen and Iphelon, and Dragonguard Elite, which is a medium set from Southern Elsewhere. Keep in mind that crafted and Overland sets are tradable and can be bought from other players. Now as for dungeon sets, we have Tsogvin's Warband, which is a medium set from Frostvault. We have Aegis Scholar, which is a medium set from Unhallowed Grave. We have Pillar of Nirn, which is a medium set from Falkreath Hold. We have Essence Thief, which is a medium set from Wildgoat Tower. And we have Leviathan, which is a medium set from Crypt of Heart 1 and 2. And there are a few more things I have to mention. For ranged build, replace 2 one-handed weapons with a bow of the same set, with Precise trait and Poison enchant. Use training traits if you're still leveling. If you're already at max level and have enough champion points, you can instead use Divines and Reinforce on a chest piece. For Overland content, you don't need as much penetration, so you can replace maces with daggers, and the Ice Staff with an Inferno Staff. Now we're moving on to the regular gear setup, which is going to be your ideal gear for the majority of content. So Beacon of Oblivion, Frontbard Ansul's Torment, Ring of the Pale Order, Crushing Wall, and 1-piece Slimecrow. Both 5-piece sets are replaceable, If you want to switch to a situational set, which provides Minor Slayer, then it usually makes more sense to replace Ansu's Torment. Otherwise, it's usually better to replace Beacon of Oblivion. Another aspect to consider is that Ansu provides a penetration line, and is focused entirely on damage, while Beacon provides a decent amount of survivability. So the first situational set is Suzanne's Torment, the best set for trash packs and for bosses that regularly spawn smaller adds. Next is Arms of Reliquan, best for easier single target fights. It does a lot of single target damage, but this damage doesn't heal you through Ring of the Pale Order. Next we have Essence Thief, best for fights where you struggle with stamina sustain due to blocking, dodge rolling, or any other reason. It doesn't work on some enemy types, like for example dragons, due to the proc spawning in inaccessible areas. And here's a few more tips. For more difficult fights, you can change the medium chest piece to a heavy one, with reinforced trait, as long as you're using a set, which comes in many weights, and Beacon of Oblivion does. And the other tips are the things I already talked about in the beginner setup. So, for a ranged build, replace the two one-handed weapons with a bow of the same set, with Precise Trade and Poison Enchant. And for overland content, you don't need as much penetration, so you can replace maces with daggers, and the Ice Staff with an Inferno Staff. And this is the gear setup for extremely difficult content. Olorim provides 430 weapon and spell damage, which is a lot, and it will provide us with the Minor Aegis buff, reducing our damage taken by 5%. You can change some, or all of the stamina enchants to health ones, for extremely hard hitting bosses. Moving on to champion points. In the blue tree, you'll want to use Master at Arms, Deadly Aim, Fighting Finesse, and Wrathful Strikes. When soloing extremely difficult dungeons, you should replace Wrathful Strikes and Fighting Finesse with 2 of the 4 mitigation slotables that match the fight's damage type, so Ironclad, Duelist Rebuff, Unassailable, and Enduring Resolve. Huge majority of the times is going to be Ironclad and Duelist's Rebuff. In the red tree, you'll want to use Bundles of Vitality, Sustained by Suffering, Rejuvenation, and Fortified. In fights with lots of adds, Siphoning spells and Bloody Renewal can be stronger than Rejuvenation and Sustained by Suffering. Moving on to race. When it comes to solo PvE, you need both damage and survivability, so pretty much all races have useful ratios. The best race for dealing damage is Khajiit. While the critical damage from Feline Ambush can sometimes be wasted, due to critical damage being capped at 125%, it will never happen in solo content, because there will be no tanks or healers, providing you with the major force buff. The best race for survivability, and what I am using, is Nord. The Ragged ratio will provide around 6% damage mitigation. Moving on to Mundus. For overland content, you should use the Thief Mundus, which increases your critical chance. For instance content, you should use the Lover Mundus, which increases your penetration. For extremely difficult dungeons, you should consider switching to the Lady Mundus, which increases your armor. Now attributes. For most content, you should put all 64 points into stamina. For difficult content, you should devote as many attribute points as necessary to health. For some content you'll be able to get away with 32 health, 32 stamina. For the extremely difficult stuff, you'll need 64 health. Now moving on to food. Most of the time, you should use the Braised Rabbit with spring vegetables, which provides max health and max stamina. As for other alternatives, we have Artyom Takeaway Broth, which provides max health, max stamina, and stamina recovery. Use it if you need a bit more stamina recovery in fights which require more blocking or dodge rolling, or if you can't sustain for any other reason. Dubious Camoran Throne is a cheaper alternative. Next we have Orzorga's Tribe Trifle Pocket, which provides max health and stamina recovery. Use it if you need a lot more stamina recovery, in fights which require more blocking or dodge rolling, or if you can't sustain for any other reason. And then we have Orzorga's Smoked Bear Haunch, which provides max health, stamina recovery, and magicka recovery. Use it in fights which require more blocking or dodge rolling, but also require you to spam Hardened Word. Moving on to potions. Most of the time you should use Tri-Stat potions. They will greatly improve your sustain. You can craft them by combining Columbine, Bugloss, and Mountain Slaver. There are better potions, but they're extremely expensive. Heroism potions can provide 100% uptime on minor heroism buff, which generates ultimate, but they're extremely expensive because they're crafted by combining Dragon Rheum, Dragon's Blood, and Columbine. In situations where you need more damage mitigation and you can spare some sustain, you can instead use the armor potions, which will increase your armor by 5280. You can craft them by combining Bugloss, Mountain Slaver, and Mudcrab Chitin. Moving on to Parse. The regular setup parses 55k on the unbuffed 6mm dummy. Here's the recording. And that's it for this video. If you have any more questions, you can comment down below or join our Discord server Wildheart. As always, feedback will be appreciated. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel and check out my Twitch. Thanks for watching and see you next time.